Welcome to our lesson on internal sources of finance. Here we'll learn about where businesses may source funds from within the business, along with the pros and cons of these sources. Let's dive in. Enterprises require financial resources to cover everything from premises to personnel and advertising to equipment. These resources can be classified into two main categories: internal and external sources of finance. Internal sources of finance originate within the business itself. These can offer quick accessibility, but they might not always suffice for larger costs or during cash flow challenges. The first internal source of finance we'll look at is personal sources. These are frequently tapped into when launching an enterprise or addressing short-term cash flow issues. Personal sources can be grouped into three primary types. One common method is tapping into personal savings. Many business owners invest their own money at the startup phase because it shows commitment and helps secure external funding. This approach doesn't need to be repaid, as it's the owner's own money, and it is easy to access. However, it's essential to note that personal savings put your personal finances at risk and constrain your personal life, so careful consideration is crucial. Credit cards issued by banks offer another option. They allow you to make purchases on credit, which you'll pay back later with interest. Credit cards are useful to bridge gaps in cash flow until your business's financial situation improves. While they provide flexibility in managing cash flow challenges and provide you quick access to funds, it's important to keep in mind that accumulated interest can raise overall costs over time. Finally, informal loans from family and friends can also be a personal source of finance. This is commonly used as a source of funds for startup costs, but can be used to cover short-term cash flow issues. This approach can provide more flexible payback terms compared to formal bank loans, along with potential advantages such as lower interest rates and being potentially easier to access. However, it comes with a caution. Mishandling such arrangements can strain personal relationships or lead to unwanted involvement in the business by the lender. Let's move on to one of the most desirable internal sources of finance: retained profit. This is the earnings the business accumulates over time. While it's a great source for expansion, it's not feasible for non-profitable startups. Advantages include that no repayment is required and it's easy to access. However, the slow accumulation of profits might mean missed opportunities, and using these funds could expose the business to cash flow risks. Last but not least, enterprises can generate funds by selling assets they no longer require. This can aid during cash flow deficits or provide finance for expansion plans. An advantage of this approach is that the proceeds don't need to be repaid. However, selling assets can be time-consuming and might lead to missed chances. Additionally, assets sold could be needed later, incurring future costs. In conclusion, business owners can utilize their personal savings for finance, which is easily accessible and requires no repayment, but it endangers their personal financial security. Credit cards offer a way to delay payments, aiding in cash flow and granting rapid fund access, but they come with interest implications. Acquiring loans from family and friends is usually flexible and low interest, but it can strain relationships and involve them in business decisions. Profits from past years can be reinvested, an option that is repayment-free and straightforward to access, yet it takes time to gather and can jeopardize the company's finances. And selling business assets can provide funding without repayment obligations, but selling can be challenging, and it may have long-term costs for the business.